Hello and welcome to another episode of the Golden Hour Podcast.
I'm your host, Connor McCaskill.
And I'm David Altizer here in a brand new set environment if you're watching the video. In fact, this is completely different.
Yeah.
Because this is not the traditional Golden Hour podcast set because it's gone now.
Yeah, well, you moved.
I moved.
Yeah.
This is your apartment.
Yeah, welcome to my apartment. We will probably get a proper set figured out here pretty soon.
Yeah. I got a lot of work ahead of me.
But you still got to unpack all your stuff and get things sorted and all that fun, not fun stuff.
Call Becky and Chris for studio inspiration.
Mm-hmm. You got a nice space. You're going to build out your garage for a set, and it'll be cool if we design it well.
Yeah, and you know what, Connor? It's actually not as far as the GPS says, because
really,
when I left my house, it said 45 minutes to get here, and then about 3 or 4 minutes later, because I got all the green lights to go onto the exit, it just instantly shaved off 15 minutes, and it was like 30 minutes. I was like, oh wow.
So with good luck,
with good luck,
I don't have, but I can be there a lot quicker.
But see, we do have the freedom as self-employed people to go during off hours,
It's true.
During non-rush hour.
In fact, we'd be dumb to do anything else.
We'd be biggie dummies if we didn't.
Yeah, biggie dumb.
All right, so shall we begin today's show?
Yeah, what's going on?
175.
Yeah, 175. What's going on, Dave?
Well, the real question is, what's going on with you?
Okay.
The R6 Mark II is now fully in your possession.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you actually are an official owner of it because I heard that you purchased it from Soundstripe.
Yes, I'm not borrowing it anymore. I paid for it. So the R6 Mark II, I used it this past week for a couple different things. Nothing too crazy. I was just shooting some B-roll with it. We were also using C70s for the live stream setup because I know my R6 won't work for that anymore, which is fine. But one of the other nitpick that I found with the R6 Mark II was and it is a small nitpick, but I don't know, it's worth saying.
Worth mentioning. I haven't heard anybody else say this.
So when I was shooting with it, I got, the battery went down to about half, and I was like, I'll just go ahead and switch out the battery. And as I was switching out the battery, something interesting was happening, right? And as I I was like, oh, shoot. So ejected the battery, popped in the new one, turned it on, and it like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, it wasn't turning on. I was like, okay. So I switched it off, waited a second, and switched it on, and then it turned on. And I got the footage that I needed to do, and then I was just kind of sitting there and playing with it. And it seems like, for some reason, at least with the one I have, maybe I just have really bad luck when it comes to cameras. Who knows? But when I pop in a new battery, it almost needs just a couple seconds to understand that there's a battery in it and that it can turn on. So yeah, it's just a little tiny nitpick. If you're popping out a battery and you need to turn on the camera quick, it may not want to.
So what you're saying is it just takes longer than what you're used to turn on.
Yeah. So with the Canon R5, I just pop out a battery, turn it on, or even the C70, just, to put in a battery, turn it on, it comes on immediately. And this camera just seems to take just a little bit of time to calibrate, I guess. I'm really not sure why it wasn't turning on.
Let us know in the comments if you know what's going on there with the old R60.
Yeah, R6 Mark II.
But it should be pretty zippy. It's got the Digix X processor, which is their top-end processor. So.
Yeah, I might need to I haven't checked. It may need an update, and that could potentially fix it. So if that fixes it, I'll let you guys know, but that's just what I discovered using it.
Let it be known. I think it's important to mention these things as we discover them, since there may be some listeners who own those cameras and need to know that. So the old R6 coming in hot from Canon. Yeah, we do have some big Canon news today. That's our main topic of the day. So we will be saving that if you're here for that, for our main topic. But I want to bring up a comment that was mentioned, a little bit of a follow-up from our last show, episode 174. And this comes from a listener, Alpaco Films, who, hello, Alpaco.
How we doing?
I just want to say thank you so much for being a fan. We see this guy's comment almost on every video.
Yeah.
So tweets out each episode. And we really, really appreciate you, man. It's really kind of you to be such a fan and to share the show. So we greatly appreciate that. But he mentioned that we were talking about the new M2 Pro and the M2 Max, which seemed like wonderful laptops. But there was one caveat with that the base storage is actually slower than if you were to go up to like a terabyte or something. And I mentioned 256 gigabyte. Well, he was saying that Max Tech, which is a YouTuber, Max Yuryev, who we actually met at NAB a couple of years ago, but he has a channel called Max Tech. He did a review, and he found that the 512 gigabyte is slower as well on than the M1 Pro base model. So yeah, so basically, if you're buying a M2 Pro or M2 Max laptop, I think the Max, I don't know. I think the Max comes with a faster one, but I don't know.
I would hope so.
Maybe go watch Max Tech's video just to make sure. Because if you're spending that kind of money, you want to be sure that you're getting, the best you can. And if it's only, but I think jumping up to a terabyte is maybe $300 or $400, which is a lot. But it's storage that you will use, especially as a video person.
I would recommend getting a terabyte regardless. It's just nice to have that extra space.
Yeah.
You never know when you're going to need it, or in a pinch, in an emergency, you forgot, oh shoot, I don't have any hard drives on me for some reason. It happens.
Yeah.
You need to dump a card or back something up, or you just want to edit straight off your machine. It's just nice to have that extra space if you can swing the extra cash.
Absolutely. I mean, I have a 4 terabyte and it's filled up all the time. I only have like 30 gigs left on it.
Well, I have a 1 terabyte and I have like 700 gigs free.
I think it's my problem is because I have so much storage, I'm like, I don't need a hard drive at all.
Well, you know what's funny?
So I never use hard drives.
You know what's funny is I actually just checked today my storage, and I had like 400 gigs of available space. I was like, oh, that's weird. I don't think I really keep anything on here. So I went through, storage, what's on my computer, found out, it's like, wait a minute. It was just a bunch of your stuff.
A bunch of old.
Yeah, it's like, I don't even know it was like Final Cut files. And I was like, I don't even remember being the one who edited this. I was like, I don't know why this is on. Some of it was Soundstripe stuff.
What the heck?
But maybe I did edit and I just don't remember. But I was like, this is Dave's stuff. And
it's old. Just get rid of it.
Oh, I did. It's gone. If you need it,
that's why
I don't have it.
That's why you freed up 200 gigs.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. Yeah, maybe, if you're listening and you haven't done a deep dive on your hard drive, take a look. You might be surprised where your storage is being used.
Yeah, I think
never know.
One Final Cut file, for some reason, I think it was because it was storing it in the library itself, which I would, that always messes me up. But I think it was like 70 or 80 gigs for that one Final Cut profile.
Yeah, it's a useful feature, I guess. I don't like it. I personally like the old school method, even though I've been a Final Cut user for years, of putting all your footage and audio in folders that you categorize yourself in Finder, and then just essentially having a project file, but they call it a library.
Yeah.
And you just uncheck, import footage.
Right.
So if you uncheck it, then it's like, a couple megabytes for a project.
What would be the purpose of storing it in the library itself, like on the Final Cut file? Because to me, it just feels like a lot of extra wasted space because it's already stored on a computer or a hard drive, and then it's also now I guess it's backed up maybe?
No, you're thinking of it actually wrong. You're thinking of it like a professional.
Okay.
But it's designed for maybe a beginner or even myself. I'll do it intentionally because it's a quick turnaround thing, or I won't even put anything in anything else. So I just create a library and then I import from Final Cut inside of Final Cut, and everything lives inside of that, and that's it.
Okay.
And then you can just back that one folder up. So it's kind of nice because you can have all of your footage and all of your audio just stored in one thing rather than a bunch of folders. And then within Final Cut, it's labeled and foldered within Final Cut.
That sounds dangerous for some reason, but I guess you could just back up that one file.
Well, that file actually is not a file. It looks as though it's a file in Finder, but you can right click and say show package contents. It's really just a folder. So if you right click and say show package content, it'll actually show you all of the files inside of folders.
So it's just packaged in a Final Cut wrapper.
exactly.
Okay, that makes sense, I guess. I don't think
Especially if you're a beginner and you don't understand how to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's a good way for people to just import everything in there. That's it. You know, you don't need to know about all the folders and stuff, which is truly an old-fashioned way of doing it. If you think about like Apple Photos, you know, you just kind of open up Apple Photos and everything's just there.
Mm-hmm.
So people are used to that, especially if you're a beginner. And I think Final Cut is kind of a gateway drug into becoming a professional. Like if you're coming from iMovie, it's an easy transition. But then if you want to learn more and dive deeper, it's there. You know?
I hate Apple Photos. Like on the computer specifically. On the phone, it's fine. On the computer, Apple Photos, especially when it was very aggressive, it was like always like, put your photos here, take it here. Would you move them over here? We're just gonna do it anyways.
Yeah.
Like leave me alone, okay? I just want to put it on my wherever I want.
Do you use Apple Photos as like your photo backup, or do you use Google Photos or anything?
I have iCloud storage, so
Yeah.
my phone.
So it's Apple Photos.
It is Apple Photos. I just don't like it. I should use Google Photos.
Google Photos is much better in terms of their organization and simplicity, I think. But you have to pay for it, and if you're going to pay for it anyways, I might as well pay for Apple because it's all just integrated into it. But
yeah, it was pretty.
That's what I'm doing.
It was pretty easy to do with Apple. It was just check and you're done.
Creator music. That's our next topic. Before we get to our main topic, and it's something I wanted to share because it's something new on YouTube, and you don't really know much about it. So I got an email this morning from YouTube about it. Today is Thursday, February 9th, as we're recording this. And so I'll click into it. And this is a big deal because this is YouTube's first time doing something truly, well, let's just say it's going to shake things up in the music licensing world. So yeah, I do think this is a little bit of an interesting thing for people like MusicBed, Artlist, Soundstripe, Epidemic Music, because this, in a way, is a competitor to them, but then it can also help them in some ways as well get discovered.
So is this a subscription thing that you have to pay for, or is this just because you create content, you have access to it?
The latter. Yeah. I have access to this on my second channel, my main channel, because I don't know the prerequisites. I don't know if you need to be... I don't know all the details of like how I even have access to this. I just got an email that it's there. It may be because I have monetization turned on, maybe because I have a certain amount of subscribers. I don't know, but it is here, and it might be. I think it's available to everybody. But what's interesting about it is it's baked right into YouTube, but it has a whole UI and everything similar to Epidemic or whatever. You know, they have playlists. They have sections for different moods. And what I love about it is the UI is actually way better than their traditional YouTube music section that they've had for a long time. I just clicked a song, Moral of the City, Indie Alternative. And the waveform is really...
Moral of the story, you mean?
It's... What did I say?
You said moral of the city, which cities don't have morals, let's be honest.
So this song is called Moral of the Story.
Yeah.
And I just clicked on it, and the waveform is here. And if you were watching the video, you could see my mouse is just scrubbing through, and I can quickly...
Yeah, it seems responsive.
Hop around. It's very responsive. Easy to use. I can favorite it. And then if I scroll over to the right, it says your revenue sharing details. So you can click that, and it'll tell you what's going on. So you can use any duration of the song. It's supported in all regions. You'll have partial monetization and...
partial monetization.
Unfortunately, we can't currently provide a download for this track. However, eligible use of this track will default to revenue sharing. You have a chance to preview videos monetization. Yeah, so I don't understand a lot of this, to be honest.
So are they doing this thing with these artists? It's like, hey, if your song gets used by creators, then
they split the revenue.
They split the revenue with you, and it's probably not a huge split towards them, but the idea is like, well, a few thousand plus YouTubers could be using it, therefore you will make money. Exactly.
And it's free to me as a YouTuber. I don't have to subscribe to anything. It's just there. I download it. And if I'm okay with giving away, half of my revenue, I'm not going to be flagged in any way, obviously, because it's tied into their YouTube system.
Although
then we have these other songs here from like real artists that you can buy for $30, or whatever, which is interesting because like to me, this doesn't sound that different from stuff you get off of, Soundstripe. And at that point, you're only paying $15 a month for a subscription, and it's like unlimited use. This is a $29 fee to use this one song that we just heard, which is kind of a standard little electronic song.
Which I'm assuming you could only use probably one time.
Yeah, exactly. So you buy the license, and then you can use it for one song or for one video. It expires in 2 years.
Whoa.
Does that mean... Oh, it starts when you buy the license. When the license expired, video monetization terms and visibility may change.
Wow.
So that means that for only 2 years, you're getting monetization. So it's an interest. It doesn't seem very appealing, honestly.
No.
Especially when you're only paying, usually $15 a month is kind of the going rate right now for a subscription-based music service.
Right. I mean, it's cool that it exists, I guess. I'm wondering how big their library even is.
Well, that's the thing that I've heard, that they're going to be working with music labels. They're also going to even be working with people like Soundstripe and others to include their library in this, in a way. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Right now, it seems a little clunky and expensive, to be honest.
Well,
but some of these are free. Some aren't. Some are $50 for one song.
This person thinks a lot of themselves.
In fact, I saw one that was $1,000 when I was scrubbing through. Here it is.
There it is.
This one. And I took a listen to it. I'm not going to play it because if this guy's charging $1,000 for it, then
he might come after us.
But I listened to it and I don't even recognize the artist's name. No offense to that artist and no offense to anybody who may know this person, but like... I didn't think there was anything that special about it.
Yeah.
Like if it's a Taylor Swift song or a Justin Bieber song or whatever, like maybe sure I get it. It's like you can't use it unless you pay me $1,000. It's like, well, okay.
I mean, at $1,000 might be cheap for Taylor Swift.
Yeah, exactly.
Although, I mean, to be fair,
we're just talking about a YouTube video here.
Yeah, and this is a beta. It literally says Creator Music Beta. So I mean, who knows what they'll add or new features or something like that. But I think it's an interesting idea. I don't know how I feel about it. The partial monetization, it's like I would rather just have a music service.
Yeah. Any type of music service would really probably be better to use than this at the moment. But YouTube, aka Alphabet or Google, has a tendency to, really feel things out, experiment, and then just attack. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they figure this out really well. And it could be a threat to all those other companies, honestly, because it's built into YouTube. You don't have to subscribe to anything. It's just there in the service that you're already using to upload videos. But if it's this clunky and this expensive, probably won't be used that much. I don't know. I
mean, I don't want to use it looking at it right now. So,
and it says some prices are set based on your channel's reach.
Oh,
so if you're Mr. Beast, every song may be $1,000 or $10,000.
Way more, yeah.
So, it's there. I just wanted to alert the media. I think it's interesting. It's interesting that YouTube's trying this. It makes sense to have it embedded into their service or their website, but I don't know. Google also has a tendency to kind of roll things out and then roll it back. So this may be a bit of a flop, and they'd be like, never mind. Let's just let third parties handle this.
Or they'll gauge it and then they'll come up with a better version later.
Yeah.
Too.
Maybe. But yeah, that's creator music from YouTube.
Interesting.
So big Canon news happened yesterday as recording this.
Yeah.
The Canon EOS R8 and the EOS R50.
Yeah.
2 new cameras.
I think the R50 is probably the more interesting one in terms of, to us, at least, because obviously this is hence the name R50, a replacement for the M50, but with an RF mount and some other nifty features. Yeah,
it's kind of, what I would have wanted a M50 to be in the first place, which is a fairly competent 24 megapixel APS-C sensor with the ability to shoot uncropped 4K at 30 frames per second with dual pixel autofocus.
Wow, with autofocus?
Yeah, who would have thought?
That's amazing.
But it does not have any type of IBIS, no stabilization on the sensor. So
it's almost a blessing when it comes to Canon.
Yeah, in a way it can be, because the IBIS can look a little warpy and wobbly.
Yeah.
So
I was watching, when I was looking up these cameras, I watched a Peter McKinnon video on the R8, and that also doesn't have internal stabilization. And he even said in his video, he's like, honestly, this is kind of a blessing because Canon's internal stabilization is crap. And I was like, wow, I'm surprised. Well, he may not have said crap, but yeah, that was essentially what he was saying. So I was like, oh, kind of interesting to hear Peter talk about it in that light. But he's being honest, and it's not the best. So it is kind of nice that there isn't. You still have lens IS. So if you pop a lens on it, which is pretty good actually, the lens IS on these cameras are great. So it might be a better combo.
Yeah, let's talk about the features of each camera, and then we can discuss our thoughts of each one.
Sure.
Let's start with the EOS R8.
Okay.
It's $1,500 for body only. It kind of resembles the shape and design of the Canon RP. I've actually seen some of the reviewers, Chris Nichols from DP Review TV specifically said it feels as though it's literally the same body. So they may be using the same build for the most part, just a new sensor. And that new sensor is the same 24.2 megapixel full frame sensor that is in the R6 Mark II,
right?
Which we, speak so highly of.
Yes.
But it is lacking the IBIS that camera has. So it's a sensor that's just sitting in there, which some cinematographers actually prefer because there are situations where you're mounting a camera on a car or on a really shaky something or other. And even if your camera has IBIS and you turn it off, because the sensor is sort of floating on the springs that move the IBIS around, when you're bouncing around on a car, it can really like shake the...
It gives it vibration,
Yeah, vibration, and the whole sensor starts really wobbling out of whack, which is why I believe the GH5S had the no... IBIS, because cinematographers requested it.
I think it was actually specifically Top Gear, right? Mm-hmm. I think the Top Gear guys were using Panasonic's mounted on cars. They were using the GH5. They discovered that it was a issue. I think they reached out, and Lumix, as we know, is really good about, listening and incorporating features, or in this case, a lack of a feature that made it even better for particular people, giving us the GH5S, which is a great camera.
And I do believe that Canon even themselves took that approach with the EOS R5C. I think they just kind of realized what we've been complaining about with Canon's IBIS. They're obviously look at the specs of the R5C, and it's like they're in a way even admitting like, look, we know like professional cinematographers do not want this, at least what we have in the camera. It's not like a Lumix system that's not as fine-tuned as that. So they removed it from that camera. So all that to say, if the R6 is appealing to you, and the one thing that's holding you back from buying it is like, I don't really want IBIS. Well, this is cheaper and it doesn't have it.
I was going to say, or the price, because this is priced a little bit more. It's the same price as the R, the original R.
$14.99. It's got, the same dual pixel autofocus performance as the R6 Mark II, which means that, it's sharing the same sensor and processor, sorry, the Digic X, I believe, which is the same processor that's found in the flagship R3.
Right.
It does Canon Log 3, which, we've shared our thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Live streaming. What is this?
Oh, hold on.
UAC compatibility allows the R8 to be used as a web camera to stream live without additional computer software such as Zoom, Skype, and similar video conference. Thanks to the full frame sensor, you'll have versatility. So that is the feature that I think your camera also has, which is plug it in over USB-C and you can use it. But for Atomos multicam systems coming out of the HDMI, you can't record and... we've talked about.
I mean, honestly, the more I'm hearing about this camera, it really is just an R6 Mark II without IBIS.
And for a video shooter, a primarily video shooter who's especially not using the EVF all that much, and especially somebody who maybe doesn't care about IBIS, this may be better. I mean, you're saving money.
Right.
It is a smaller battery, I believe.
Oh, that's right. I was like, what? Why is it so much cheaper? It is the smaller battery.
So LPE 17.
Yeah.
There's some photography features here as well that aren't present. You don't have a joystick. The EVF is significantly worse.
Okay.
But it does have the powered hot shoe, so you can plug in an XLR thing on top, the Tascam XLR thing.
It doesn't look like it has a back control dial. Right? Doesn't that look like that? Like, check out where you...
that's
no, not that
one there.
And there should be a third one down below where your thumb would be.
Gotcha.
On the back of the camera. Yeah, it looks like it's just a directional D-pad.
Yeah.
Instead of a dial, which the dials are always better.
Yeah, so I mean, there's some hardware differences. I would imagine it's not as weather sealed. That's the whole point. Is this is kind of your prosumer camera.
Yeah.
And like you just said earlier, this is, and by the way too, it is a 4K 60 10-bit internal with no crop. So that's nice as well for that price that you're getting 4K 60 without a crop. So you're getting that 6K to 4K down res, that really sharp, clean, beautiful 4K image that we do like on the R6. The limitations that we know are there. It's, the Canon Log 3 and all that. But it is what it is. Looks good. It'll match with the R6. So maybe if your R6 is your main primary camera and you just need a second camera, this could be a good option as a B because it will look the same and you're saving $1,000.
Yeah.
RF mount, of course. This is, I think they're not saying it. They're not calling this the EOS R Mark II, but I think this really fills that gap that was there with Canon's lineup where the EOS R has been sitting on B&H and on Amazon for years and years and years now because it sits in that sweet spot of the $1,500 kind of like you want a full frame camera that can do good video and it's full frame. You don't care about some of these fancy features. You just want a good all-arounder. I think this is it. This is kind of like the MacBook Air of Canon.
Yeah, actually, that's a good way to put it. It definitely isn't still, I don't think, the R Mark II. Even though we're saying it is kind of unofficially, just because it's just a different sensor. It's not the 30 megapixel sensor, whatever that one was, close to that, with the EOS R. And I do think that's a area that they still need to fill. I think a 30 megapixel sensor is kind of a nice sweet spot.
You know what? You're right. I just pulled up the EOS R on B&H, and they're doing a savings now that still takes it down to more than I paid on some sort of random Christmas sale from 3 years ago. I remember you and I maybe both picked it up at the same time.
Yeah.
B&H did a sale, I think it was 2019. It was $12.99 for like a Christmas sale.
Yep.
I've never seen it go that low ever since then. So there was something going on where they just blew them out.
They must have had like a lot of extra stock for no reason over Christmas.
Yeah, so that's when I picked up an EOS R myself. But right now you can buy it for $13.99, which is absurd to me. This camera's so old and it still costs that much. This should be $1,000.
You can still buy a 5D Mark IV.
Really?
So, yeah,
brand new?
I actually, on Instagram, got an advertisement. It was like, the versatile 5D Mark IV, buy it now. Like from Canon. It was like a Canon advert. I was like, are you serious? You're still selling this thing? Like new? Is that a thing? Am I confused?
That camera came out in 2016 and it's a DSLR that's using EF mount, which is a completely discontinued mount now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. The EOS R, it had the LPE6 battery. It has a bit more heft to it in terms of body. It had the top LCD screen, which none of the other Canons are doing that anymore.
Yeah, which
probably because people don't care.
I kind of miss it.
But it's cool.
A little bit. Like I didn't think I looked at it until I got the R6 Mark II, and then I realized it's not there, and I was like, oh, I guess I did look at that.
There was something, for some reason, about this camera. It was quirky. It was a quirky camera, but there's something about it. I did really enjoy using it.
I liked it a lot. The only thing...
I didn't like the touch bar.
I was going to say, the touch bar, they did away with the joystick, did the touch bar, although I guess you could say it's nice that it had anything at all because the R8 doesn't have anything.
But look at the back panel. This one had that D-pad too. I forgot about that.
I forgot about that too. I didn't like that.
So the R6 has I feel like the R6 line is kind of the 5D of the mirrorless, it seems. It's like kind of the mid, tier, upper mid. The R3 is your flagship, at least for now. Apparently, there's still rumors that there's going to be an R1.
I think the R5 is more the 5D, personally. I wonder if that's also in terms of the naming, R5,
well, I think
5D.
Yeah, true. But the R5 is just such a higher megapixel, and the 5D was never known as a high megapixel camera. There was a high megapixel variant of the 5D. There was a 5DR that was the high megapixel version. So because the R5 is just, is it 50 megapixels or 60?
It's 45, and the 5D Mark IV was 30, right? Yeah, and the R6 Mark II is 24. So I think we haven't really. Maybe they just decided with the mirrorless version of the 5D, they're like, oh, why don't we just go with more megapixels? Who knows what Canon's doing? Canon just does what they want.
That's true, because I guess you're right, because the R5, 5D, R6, 6D.
The 60, yeah.
So maybe that's
And then also the M50 and the R50.
Nice segue.
Good segue.
Nice segue.
Oh, thank you. I thought you were going to play You Suck.
No.
You suck.
Yeah.
There it is. So yeah, speaking of things that suck, the EOS R50. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm sure it's great.
So yeah, the Canon R50, which is the camera that it's been highly anticipated by
Everyone? I mean, well, so here's the thing. The M50, the original M50, I don't know about the Mark II. I doubt the Mark II because that camera was stupid. It was like the most popular Canon camera of all time, at least in recent time.
Yeah.
Probably not of all time. But in recent history anyways. So obviously when the RF mount came out, everyone's like, okay, well then obviously most popular camera recently, new mount, just makes a lot of sense. I'm actually surprised. I'm looking at the price here. It's $679 for body only. That feels actually pretty affordable considering the fact that you are getting 4K up to 30, I believe.
4K 30.
4K 30 with autofocus, which is something the original M50 did not have in 4K.
Yeah. By the way, it was already stupid to begin with when it was out.
Right.
Because Sony had many options that were a similar type of camera for a similar price point that had autofocus.
But here's the thing about the Sony cameras is that they said Sony on the top and the Canon camera said Canon on the top. Therefore, for some reason, people wanted it more. Also, it came out during the time when, in my opinion, anyways, the Sony sensors weren't the greatest.
In terms of straight out of camera.
Colors. Straight out of camera color, and I think they were mostly 8-bit.
Yeah, they were all 8-bit. Yeah.
They were all 8-bit, and it wasn't the best 8-bit out there. So
totally,
Canon did kind of have a leg up in that time.
And it was the height of the Casey Neistat vlogging kind of era. So it was right time, right place. The M50 really fit that category of like a low budget vlogging camera that's small, lightweight, easy to carry around. Has a mic jack, has a flip screen, small little lenses. It had everything you needed as a vlogger.
It was a phone replacement. That's really what it was at the end of the day. So they had to keep it sub-$1,000 because people who are on phones, they're shooting with phones, they're not going to spend a ton of money. And it had to look better than a phone. Those were like the two things that it needed to do. And be small because it needs to fit in like any school backpack or something. And it did all those things. It didn't have the best autofocus, but most of the people who are going to shoot with this were probably shooting 1080 instead of 4K.
Yeah, and 1080 had no limitations with autofocus.
Yeah, and it didn't crop in. Now 4K has become very much mainstream even in phones, so it makes sense that this one, that they're not holding back as much. So, but here's the thing, it is still a Canon camera, so what are they keeping?
Yeah, there's a lot of photography features actually here that they're limiting.
Okay.
Obviously, again, it's only 4K 30. We're not getting 10-bit. We're not getting 60 frames per second 4K. The thing that is interesting though about this is it's using the same Digic X processor in all of the flagships right now. The R6 Mark II, the R8 that we just talked about, and of course the R3, which is their top end. So you're going to get amazing eye tracking, autofocus, and all that. So you're getting the best from Canon and it's such a small little body. But there are limitations. I'm not seeing anything here about Canon log or 10-bit, which is fine if you're just a YouTube vlogger or whatever anyways, or you're just filming your kids.
I mean, chances are if you're buying this camera, you're editing an iMovie anyways. So it's like, do you really need all those extra features? No. If you're coming from a phone, you're expecting it to work kind of similar to the phone. In fact, I think this camera, and I was watching videos on it with DP Review, I believe, and they were saying the same thing. If it's like made to work in auto.
Yeah.
It's not really, it kind of fights you in manual. It doesn't want to work in manual. You can make it work in manual, but it doesn't like it.
Well, but it's just like the M50 though. If you remember, there wasn't many buttons on that camera.
No.
And I think this is essentially the same. You have like an ISO button that you could then also maybe customize if you wanted to, but that's it. On the back, there's a little D-pad similar to the other one, so you could probably add things there, and you may or may not figure out the muscle memory of how to do that. But if you want real tactile buttons, the R8 has it. But if the R8, the $1,500 camera, is too much out of your price bracket, there's the R10, which is kind of like a level up from this, and it stays in that like $1,000 category. But
right,
there's really nothing, I think, even from both camps, Sony and Canon, in this price point that's giving this kind of balance of a small, lightweight, easy to travel, easy to carry, everyday carry type camera with adequate 4K, with top of the line autofocus.
I mean, except for maybe, well, top of the line autofocus for sure. But I was going to say maybe the XT30 was kind of a competitor to that. I think it was like $700, same price, or maybe a little more. But definitely not good autofocus. And Fuji hasn't followed that up with another one, I don't think. I don't think there was a T40.
And as much as we love Fuji, I think you just got to admit the truth of the matter is, like, Fuji is a niche brand.
Oh, 100%.
Like, you're not going to, like, your mom or my mom would maybe carry one of these because you would see it at Walmart or Costco and be like, oh yeah, I need a nicer camera than my phone, and you buy this. You're not going to buy a Fuji, except I think you bought your mom a Fuji, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I did. Although now that I see this, like, I could probably help her sell that camera and help her buy this one instead, because this would be a better tool for her. It just would be.
That's the thing with Canon that you can't really argue with, is their user interface for beginners is so easy and straightforward. It just works, and the touchscreen works exactly how you think it would.
Yeah,
you touch it and it does stuff.
I think I was a little biased when I helped my mom purchase that camera, because I was like, well, I mean, like, I like Fujifilm, and this is a cool Fujifilm camera, and she'll like it. But that's the thing, is, like, I understood how to use it, but she did not care to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's too many buttons, there's too many options, even though it was a more beginner camera. I think the R50 does have that beginner menu system that the M50 had, where it's just everything was super simple, super dumbed down. So it's like, I don't need to spend time to learn this. That's what they're going for.
But what DP review, again, Chris Nichols, we keep bringing this up, and we'll link it in the show notes of the podcast. And if you're not familiar with what show notes are, it's basically just the description of the podcast. Feel free to look up, show notes, and then type, how to read show notes in whatever podcast player you use. But anyways, DP review, Chris Nichols basically said, this really is not really a gateway for somebody who wants to eventually upgrade and wants to take photography seriously. This really is, at least in his perspective, like kind of the perfect non-phone camera that kind of, it does have these computational photography modes built in, but once you want to start shooting raw, it gets really slow because it's a UHS 1 speed only memory card. It just seems to write to the card very slowly. It's hard to adjust things manually. It's just kind of cramped, and they don't have all the buttons laid out there.
It only has one dial. It's that top shutter dial.
But again, I would argue that that's exactly how the M50 was too. And we made it work. I mean, you took it to Germany and we vlogged with it, and
I liked it.
It was fun. If you just embrace the quirks of it, it's so tiny that it'll be fun, even as a professional, to just kind of have it to hang out with and take pictures of your kids, and maybe use as a dedicated, very lightweight vlog style camera. Are you going to be shooting a movie on it? No, you shouldn't. But will we? Yes, because it'll be cool video.
Yeah, that might be a fun video. Yeah, we'll somehow attach master primes to it.
But I think this also is a response to the wildly popular ZV-1 and ZV-E10 from Sony in particular. The ZV-E10 is in this price bracket, and it's an APS-C camera.
The ZV-E10 is a lot more, isn't it?
Let me see. So the ZV-E10 from Sony is an APS-C
it's not.
camera that's small, that doesn't have IBIS. It has a flip screen, a mic jack, and everything. So I think the question is, if you're in the $700 price bracket, you're looking for a camera to use for YouTube, maybe a vlogger, or maybe even a B cam. Which one do you get? And the thing that is the case with this Sony ZV-E10 is the case with almost all of Sony's cameras. If you buy a Sony camera, you're getting all of the profiles. So this camera does have S-Log, if you need it.
I mean, if you're buying it for a B camera, the obvious thing is buy the system that you have.
Yes.
But if you're just buying it to be a vlog camera, Sony's kicking butt with this camera. I mean, it's a pretty spicy, cheap camera.
Yeah. So, but it doesn't have an EVF, whereas the EOS R50 does have an EVF. So if that's important to you, maybe you're taking more photos, that would make more sense. I would say maybe we should do a comparison between the two. That could be something I could talk to Soundstripe about.
Yeah.
Because I think these are very comparable in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think Sony probably has an edge in terms of video quality and the features that it has. I have some friends that run their entire YouTube channel off of 2 of these ZV-E10s. Mm-hmm. They're totally powerful enough to be your main camera, even for YouTube. And it does have a dial on it. And an FM button, but Canon's UI will probably be much easier to use and simpler to use.
Actually, I mean, another thing though, because again, these are being priced for a audience that is beginning and potentially doesn't have as much income to spend on these things. The thing about the RF mount, as we know, is that third-party lenses is kind of a non-existent thing.
Yeah.
Third-party lenses tend to be cheaper. The Sony camera obviously has the E-mount. Tons of third-party options that are actually amazing.
Yes.
So that would be another leg up for the Sony over the Canon. It's just third-party support.
Absolutely. You're right. You bring up a good point because Sigma makes a wonderful, trio of APS-C lenses that my friend has with that camera. It's $1,200 for the full kit. A 16, a 30, and a 56, all constant f1.4 lenses. Mm-hmm. These are wonderful, tiny little primes that you can upgrade to even with a cheap camera and get beautiful results. And nothing like this exists on RF.
Not at all. And the thing about this too is like, you're spending more money, twice as much money on lenses that you would spend on the camera body. It seems a little weird, but what's great about lenses, especially if you stay in a system, is that they grow with you. So like these lenses would still be great if you bought a different Sony camera.
Yeah, like if you were to upgrade and you're primarily a video shooter, you start with the ZV-E10, you buy these lenses, you can go to the FX30?
The FX30, yeah.
It's basically an FX3, but a crop sensor version. Mm-hmm. So these lenses could carry through into a very professional tool that is, doesn't have shutter angle or waveforms. But hey, it's great.
Well, the FX30, for what it is it looks actually like a pretty
amazing.
Good camera. I've never gotten to mess with it, I don't think, but it looks great.
Patrick Tommaso uses it as his primary tool, and
really?
he kind of swears by it. He loves it. Even I think he likes it more than the FX3, I think, because of lenses and other things. But let us know what you guys think about the R50. I think it is interesting, though. This will now be even with the ZV-E10 being around and with these lens options, if somebody were to ask me, hey, I'm starting a YouTube channel, what camera do I get? It would be a hard toss-up between these two, because I know if you're a complete beginner and you have zero interest in growing, you just want a good image that looks like it's shot on some sort of, SLR of some sort, or mirrorless camera with some bokeh and
SLR, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a lens that has bokeh that doesn't look like an iPhone.
Right.
This will look really good straight out of camera. And with the kit lens, the 18 to 45, it's $799. So, and it's very small. Now that is an f4 to f6.3, which is pretty terrible. So it's hard to recommend.
It is actually really bad.
It's hard to recommend a cropped body camera with an f4.5 lens on it.
That's going to look worse than your phone.
In some ways, unless you have good light. Canon's problem is the lenses. They need some RF. I think they're calling this RFS. So things that have the RF mount but are designed for APS-C. They need something similar to this, like a 16-1.4.
They just need to be less greedy. Open up the mount to third party people. Like it doesn't make. They haven't done this before, have they? Like This feels weird.
I know the EF system. There was, obviously the Sigma 18 to 35 was the EF lens. It was very popular.
Yeah.
I guess that's the solution. I guess if you buy the R50, you could buy an 18 to 35 and put a RF to EF adapter on it. But
I mean, that's what I did with the M50. I got an M to EF adapter, and then I threw, I think it was a 24 to 70 on it, and it worked pretty well.
You can also use the turbo booster or the speed booster for Metabone's or Canon's own one that I use on my C70 on here. But at that point, it's a cheap camera and you're putting $1,000 worth of optics in front of it.
People aren't going to do that who are buying this camera, probably.
Yeah. So with that being said, because of the lens options for the ZV-E10 being so much better, which means in turn that you're going to get a better image quality. I think until Canon solves their lens issues, even their kit lens is a wide open at 3.5 instead of 4.5. That doesn't sound like much of a difference, but 3.5 to 4.5 is a significant difference.
That's pretty good.
But that kit lens, still is pretty trash, but there's options. There's so many more options on Sony.
Right. Yeah. I think having not used the R50, so, with that caveat,
true,
I would recommend the Sony over the Canon.
I do think as I look at this image, and just knowing Canon's build, I'm sure this is going to feel very plasticky and small, but it does look a little bit more put together in terms of hardware. You got the nice rubber, you got the mic jack in a nice place, and I'm sure it'll last,
a decent amount.
I'm probably going to get a hold of one because I am interested in it, and because it's right in line with an M50, and Canon is, basically this I think signals the fact that the M mount is officially over, because this would have been an M50 replacement, but it's using an RF mount now. So, all the manufacturers are doing this now, and it's because Sony is so smart and they basically designed a system where one mount can work for a crop sensor or a full frame sensor.
I think it was
use the same lenses.
It was retroactively made for full frame though, right? Because wasn't the E mount for crop originally?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So they made it work. I heard that there's probably you actually. Did we talk about it on the podcast? But there's some limitations because of that with Sony. Although they're clearly able to work around it because their stuff's still great.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to it, but yeah, because they designed it for APS-C. The circle of the mount is very small compared to RF or the Z mount from Nikon or the Leica mount. By having a larger mount, you can have more room for the IBIS to move around. You can have, in some ways, better optics. But Sony's been able to make it work. And because it's so small, they have tiny little lenses on a full frame body, which is really nice too. So There's pros and cons to both. But their workaround is that I think they've kind of reached their limit of IBIS performance at this point, because otherwise they just can't move it around without the sensor mount getting in the way of the sensor moving. So that's why they have the Catalyst Browse system, where if you just need even much more stabilization for video, you can do that in post.
I wonder if we'll hit a point where that comes back to bite them, because I was always curious. It's like, oh, Sony hasn't made their new mount yet, but clearly they're just sticking with what they got.
Yeah.
And who knows? I don't know. It could in the next couple of years. Stabilization gets a lot better on other cameras, maybe, and they can't keep up, or maybe they hit the upper limit already. And
I don't know. The G Master lenses that they keep putting out look incredible, and they seem amazing, and they're small and compact, and so
heavy
they're doing a good job.
Yeah,
they're hefty, they're expensive.
Yeah,
so a lot of things to talk about with it, but if you're in the Canon ecosystem, this is sort of interesting. I don't even know if many people on this podcast would be interested in this, but I think it's an interesting thing to talk about and to philosophize. What's the word?
Discuss.
Philosophize.
Yeah, philosophize. Yeah, that's a real word probably. I think if you have the M50, this could, and you like that camera and you want to upgrade ? This could be a good new thing to upgrade to that won't break the bank.
Yeah. So for our last segment, I'm going to share some Nintendo news.
How appropriate this music.
So Nintendo did their traditional Nintendo Direct announcement this week. And if you didn't watch this, this is a really fun, nerdy thing for me.
Right.
Growing up as a child of the 90s myself, the main Nintendo product that I used was actually the Game Boy Color.
Yeah.
And check this out. The Nintendo Switch has now started offering the original Game Boy.
Games are being added to Nintendo Switch Online.
Yeah. So they're including the original Zelda game on Game Boy, Tetris, which I'm very excited about. Look at that.
Yeah, I mean, dude, compared to
Tetris,
to the Tetris that you're playing, where it's like way better, this is great.
No, it is. It is great because of the simplicity of it. No, obviously this is really like nerdy stuff, but if you're watching the video, you can kind of see what they're doing. But they even have emulation where you can see what the colors would look like on the original Game Boy, the big, thick, chunky one. You guys remember the original Game Boy was huge, and it was black and white only, and it had this kind of, they call it the pea green color that looks terrible, but it's nostalgic for a lot of us. They showed a lot of the games that they're allowing you to play. This is with Nintendo's subscription service, Nintendo Online, Nintendo Switch Online. You pay a yearly fee, and you can play. Right now, they've had NES games, Super Nintendo games, N64 games, and people have been waiting for Game Boy games because obviously the Switch is a portable system, and these games were designed for portable play. And there is something to that. There's something to the fact that these games were designed to be simple, to just play on the bus or just turn it on, play a couple levels, turn it off, like in passing. They're very simple and easy to understand. And I think makes sense to put on the Switch because the Switch is a portable system. You can play online with some of the games, which probably won't happen. They're going to add the Pokemon trading card game in terms of Game Boy.
Wow.
But where are the Pokemon games?
Oh, dude, they ain't releasing those. Those are too valuable. I wonder what Game Freak, the developer for Pokemon, and Nintendo's deal is behind the scenes. Because it is owned by Nintendo, but it feels like Game Freak can do whatever they want.
Yeah. Well, we're speaking here to Connor McCaskill, who has purchased even I think you own every Pokemon game on Switch, right?
On the Switch? I own the newest one, which was R8 at best. I mean, here's the deal. At the end of the day, these are all kids' games, and I'm playing them out of pure nostalgia. Yeah. So they're trash games, honestly. They're terrible. But I still, for some reason, play them because I'm a sucker for nostalgia.
To be honest, I feel like the original Pokemon Game Boy games were actually as simple and kind of almost boring now as they are. Just the story and the whole collection process and the building your system up and battling the trainers and stuff, it was really well made. It was like the purest form of. They've been replicating that same model all the way through even the modern stuff. Yeah,
it's pretty incredible that they have changed as little as they have over the last 20, 30, 25 years, 26
Just the graphics
years.
change, but the mechanics are essentially the same.
Arguably, they've gotten worse. Yeah, I think, I don't know. I think the last good Pokemon games probably were the DS era, in my opinion, but that's just me.
So, we didn't get any news that those games are coming, but I wouldn't be surprised really if they sold it, as a standalone Game Freak, remaster.
Yeah, I think that what they saw is like, we could sell Pokemon Yellow again on the Switch as a separate purchase for $30.
Yeah.
And make like a full price instead of including it in the subscription where, you're playing these games which maybe didn't have as much of a popular following.
Yeah. But then after they announced the Game Boy games, they followed it up with another system that they're adding. Oh yeah, the Game Boy Advanced. Remember that sound?
Of course I do.
So this is for the expansion pack, which is they call it Nintendo Switch Online Plus Expansion Pack.
Great.
The naming of that is hilarious. It's an online service. It's just a subscription. It's not a pack. It's not a thing you add to something physically.
Sounds like they learned how to name things from Xbox.
But they're including Wario, the what's it called?
WarioWare. Yeah.
I remember my friend had this game and it was so much fun on the Game Boy Advanced. I've seen videos of this Kurin. It's an interesting game. If you want to play Mario Kart on GBA instead of Mario Kart 8, which is superior on Switch
in every single way. I like the Mario and Luigi games.
Mario and Luigi Superstar Sega or Saga.
Super Sega.
Sega. And then Legend of Zelda The Minish Cap, one of my favorites.
Yeah, nice.
I played that.
I tried to emulate this game on my Mac and I started playing it for like, I don't know, an hour maybe at most.
Really?
And then I fell off on that one.
Last night?
No.
Okay, because I told you about it last night.
Yeah, a while ago, actually. It
Gotcha.
came back to me seeing the visuals. I was like, no, actually, I do recognize that.
We're also going to get Metroid Fusion, which is actually, I think, arguably one of the best GBA games. Some people say Metroid Fusion is really good, so that's awesome. And some more, but the reason I like this and I wanted to share it is because, again, I feel like Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games are just really special to me from a nostalgic standpoint. I would say that for me personally, because of course we lived in an era without phones and without anything like that, the Game Boy was probably the system I used the most, actually, for myself.
That makes sense.
It was just anytime we'd go anywhere, as a family, sitting in the back playing my Game Boy. So go to church, go to restaurants, travel down to Florida for like a 10-hour trip. Was on my Game Boy the whole time, playing Pokemon, playing Pokemon.
playing Pokemon. I had I didn't have the Game Boy, I don't think I had the Game Boy Advanced either. I knew people who had it, but I had the clamshell, the SP.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was, I think, my first Game Boy. I had the silver one, and that one was a lot of fun. And I played a lot of Sonic.
That was a big deal when that came out because of the backlit screen.
Yeah, it was cool. I liked it a lot. And then eventually, of course, got the DS, which I think is probably my favorite handheld system.
The big thick one?
Yeah, the thick one, the original one.
It looked like a prototype that they sold to the public, because when they came out with the DS Lite, it was kind of like, oh, that's what it should look like.
Yeah, but I honestly
I like the chunky big one.
Yeah, I did too. I thought that my brother had the DS Lite and I had the DS, and I was like, DS is better.
Yeah, even though the screen was inferior.
It was worse in pretty much every way, but I thought it was better.
One thing that I like about these, expansion packs or whatever, first off, the legalities of it, fully legal. You're not downloading ROMs, which is a gray area. You can't buy these games new, really. And if you owned them in the past, does that qualify as like, well, I paid money for it when I was a kid. I've lost it along the way of my life. Or maybe you even own it still and you just don't want to plug it into your Game Boy.
This is your own moral compass thing.
Download the ROM and put it on your computer and play it very easily. If you're not familiar with ROMs, it's a whole world that you can get into, and the morality and the legalities of it's a total gray area. But I don't believe people are going to jail or really getting punished for it, except for people who are making money off of it.
What are you in for? I downloaded Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story illegally. Oh man, yeah, rough time.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo, of course, openly says do not do it. It's illegal because it's their IP. They want to control it, and they do have these services. So if you're playing,
I feel like this service is probably a direct result of ROMs being so popular, because people still want to play this stuff. And You're right, it's like older consoles are, I mean, like I got a GameCube right behind camera, you can't see it, but it's broken. It won't accept controller inputs right now, so I can't play any of my GameCube games. So like the ability to play them on ROMs is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I don't think they have GameCube games yet on the Switch. That'll be next.
That's a system that is missing.
Yeah.
On the Nintendo Switch service.
I'll probably be more excited for that than for this, because
that was your system that you grew up on.
Yeah, I grew up on the GameCube.
Yeah, for those of you who may or may not know, Connor is actually a little younger than me. So
yeah, just a little bit.
He may not look it with that beard, but but he is about 5 years, 6, 7
years younger than you, I think.
Dang. You're younger than I thought.
Yeah. Most people think I'm old.
Yeah. So for me, it was the PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64 were the consoles of my era.
Right.
What are your thoughts now as an adult with the Switch? Do you play it that often?
No, not really.
Just when a new Pokemon game comes out?
Yeah, sometimes I'll get the new Breath of the Wild game when that comes out, because that was pretty cool. And then I'll get the which they did announce.
They announced that.
Or
they also
it's been announced, but
they also announced a remaster of Metroid Prime, which I've never played, but I
played it.
Apparently, I think again one of the best Metroid games. It was on a Wii.
It was on the
originally,
GameCube.
Right? Oh, okay, GameCube.
Yeah, it was a GameCube game.
Very cool. So this is really cool. You can actually buy this now. It's available right now.
Oh, that's cool.
Digitally, and
I
it'll ship
remember,
in a week or two.
I remember playing Metroid Prime on my GameCube, and I actually I think I still own it. I could probably find it.
Oh, cool.
But I also remember being a kid and was terrible and couldn't beat it. I think I couldn't beat like the first few levels, and I gave up on it. So
It's weird that they haven't continued this model of it's like maybe a bit of a Halo kind of a vibe, like
first person
it's
shooter.
a first person shooter, very spacey, and Metroid doesn't seem to have that design right now anymore. And I think that's what was so special about it was that it was a first person shooter.
They
with Metroid, right?
announced a new one years ago, and then they delayed it, and then they've never said anything about it since. So I don't know what happened with that.
Well, I mean, here's this. This is cool.
This is cool.
I don't know if I'd want to spend $50 on just a remaster of a GameCube game, but
I'd rather spend $50, fix my GameCube, and then play it there.
yeah. But we did, you mentioned Zelda. They did share a new teaser trailer for the, the next version of that same game.
Yeah.
So I guess you would call it a sequel to.
It is a sequel. Yeah. It's
or what's it called?
Ocarina of Time? No.
Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Is it called Breath of the Wild 2? Or
I don't think so. No.
What's it called? Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. So if you're a fan of that, and I've tried so hard to get into this game, it's hard for me to get into these very open world games for some reason.
It's a game to get lost in and to spend some time in. And if you don't, I mean, I've heard from you directly, you'd prefer the games where you can turn it on, play a little bit, and then leave.
Yeah, that's why I love Tetris, because I can just listen to a podcast, mindlessly play for like 30 minutes, and then turn it off.
Right. Yeah, that's not what this is for.
Yeah. Though I did see the Harry Potter game that came out, and my wife is the biggest Harry Potter fan. So I think maybe as a husband, I'm like, this could be fun for her to play it, and then we could play it together. Sure. Like I can see that as a fun experience.
I think that would be a great idea.
But yeah, this does look very nice. And the thing that blows my mind is like we see the gameplay from this, and obviously even the original Legend of Zelda game. The graphics are really special for a Switch, which is a very underpowered system. Mm-hmm. They're kind of like leaning into the art style, which makes it kind of a lower polygon type of art style, which kind of has like a cartoony look. So they're sort of leaning into the limitations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was a smart choice. I mean, it's something and that's one of the things that Pokemon did not do.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I was trying to say is like, look how beautiful this game is.
Yeah.
Why can't Pokemon Arceus look like that?
Well, Arceus even arguably looks better than the newest game. It's funny because I don't know how many people care about this, but I'm going to talk about it. I was playing the Violet game, which I got in Japan. That's why I own it.
That's cool.
I wasn't going to buy it, but then I saw it when we were in Japan, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. So I bought it. But there's this one point right in the beginning of the game where it's the person, like you're on top of a lighthouse, and the character's like, wow, look at this amazing view. And it pans to the view, and the view is like 2D cutouts of trees, low poly. It looks terrible. And they just did that. And then they like cut to like different angles of this terrible looking environment. And I'm like, wow, I feel like this game is not finished.
It seems like unfortunately the Pokemon company that makes those games, they just kind of crank them out and they don't really put the time. Like I know that it seems as though Nintendo has been working on this for a very long time.
Yeah.
Zelda game.
I feel like the Zelda team definitely, I mean, they know, I think that what they figured out is this. Zelda knows that if they don't produce the absolute optimal quality, their game's going to get trashed. Pokemon can do whatever they want.
Yeah, and it'll sell like crazy.
So they can release an absolute dumpster fire of a game, and people are like, well, it has new Pokemon. That's pretty cool. And you know what? They're not wrong. They should just go back to, I think, 2D animated sprites. I think that was the best era of Pokemon.
Which is why it would be wonderful if we could buy a modern version, or a reimagining of a GBA title from Pokemon, or like the original Yellow. Yellow was my favorite game.
There are people who have made completely original games in the older styles.
Oh, cool.
I've never done it. I've never played them, but I hear they're pretty good.
Cool. Well, if you're listening by this point and you're a fan of Pokemon, Nintendo, please let us know in the comments. Tell us your favorite games if you have any comments about what we had to say there.
Which one is your favorite Pokemon game?
And yeah, I just want to end on, again, asking you guys to please, if you're a fan of the show, give us a rating and review in the Apple Podcast player if you're an Apple Podcast listener. And if you are a listener on Spotify, go ahead and leave a review there if you can. I think you can leave like a rating there as well. And a reminder too that if you're listening and you don't know this already, we do include chapter markers in the podcast. So if you use Apple Podcasts, Overcast, or other podcast players that support chapters, you can hop around and go to the point that you want to go to or go back. And then for Spotify, they don't support traditional chapter markers. So I have to put it in the description as a time code. So go to the description in Spotify and you can see inside of little quotation marks or inside of parentheses rather is the time code, and you can skip around right there. So also, if you would like to sponsor the show, please reach out to us at ghp.fm/contact. We're looking for sponsors and partners to be a part of this show. We'd love to continue to grow it, make the production better, and can't do that for free. So
apparently all this stuff costs money.
Yeah, so we would love any type of partnership. If you would be interested, please reach out.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to end it on, with some fun Nintendo news and then some housekeeping. So yeah,
absolutely.
Good stuff.
Good show, Connor.
Thanks, Dave. Should we end it like we normally do? Once again, I'm Connor McCaskill.
And I'm David Altizer, and we will see you
next week.
There's the music.
Oh, next week.
Yeah, next week. We'll fade it out. Bye-bye. There you go.